Welcome, everyone. On this slide, we demystify the core concept of gross domestic product, or GDP, often referred to as the secret formula behind a country's economy. At its heart, GDP represents the total market value of all finished goods and services produced within a country's borders over a specific period, typically a year or a quarter. It is the most widely recognized and crucial indicator of a nation's economic health and overall size. Think of it as a comprehensive report card for an economy's performance. When we talk about GDP, we're essentially summing up all the economic activity: what consumers spend, what businesses invest, what the government spends, and the net effect of our exports versus imports. Understanding these components is key to deciphering how an economy functions and where its strengths and weaknesses lie. Gross domestic product, or GDP, serves as a fundamental measure of a nation's economic output. It quantifies the total monetary value of all finished goods and services produced within a country's geographical borders over a specified period, typically a quarter or a year. This comprehensive metric encompasses everything from manufactured goods and agricultural products to healthcare services, education, and financial transactions. GDP acts as a vital barometer for assessing the health, size, and growth rate of an economy, providing essential data for policymakers, investors, and businesses to make informed decisions regarding fiscal policy, market strategies, and investment opportunities. Gross domestic product, or GDP, functions as a nation's primary economic report card. It quantifies the total monetary value of all final goods and services produced within a country's borders during a specified period. This critical indicator enables policymakers and analysts to evaluate economic health and growth trajectories. A strong GDP signifies a productive, expanding economy, often correlating with higher employment, increased consumer spending, and improved living standards. Conversely, a weakening GDP suggests economic contraction, necessitating strategic policy interventions. Comprehending GDP is essential for assessing national economic performance and informing crucial financial and governmental decisions. The journey of economic measurement is a fascinating evolution. Initially, economic thought centered on tangible assets like gold and silver under mercantilism, or the agricultural output championed by the physiocrats. The significant shift toward modern national income accounting began in the wake of the Great Depression, propelled by the insights of economists like John Maynard Keynes and the pioneering work of Simon Kuznets, who developed early frameworks for national income. Post-World War II, the concept of gross domestic product, or GDP, solidified its role as a primary indicator, continually refined to encapsulate the increasing complexities of globalized economies and reflect a nation's total economic activity. GDP serves as a critical compass for national policymaking. Governments utilize GDP data to formulate fiscal and monetary strategies, aiming to stimulate economic growth, manage inflation, and reduce unemployment. Beyond mere economic output, GDP is a primary indicator of a nation's overall progress and the improvement of living standards, guiding resource allocation towards education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Furthermore, a country's GDP significantly influences international investment decisions and shapes its standing within the global economic landscape, reflecting its capacity for innovation and sustained development. Understanding GDP's comprehensive role is fundamental to comprehending national and international economic dynamics. Effective economic analysis begins with proficient navigation of relevant data. Understanding GDP requires accessing credible sources, such as national statistical offices and international financial institutions, to ensure accuracy and reliability in our foundational metrics. A critical distinction lies between nominal GDP, which measures output at current prices, and real GDP, which adjusts for inflation, providing a more accurate reflection of actual economic growth. This adjustment is vital for comparing economic performance across different periods. Interpreting these data points involves identifying trends, recognizing patterns, and understanding the underlying factors that influence economic shifts. Such rigorous analysis empowers policymakers to formulate effective strategies and guides investors in making informed decisions, ultimately shaping a nation's economic trajectory. Gross domestic product, or GDP, fundamentally quantifies the total market value of all final goods and services produced within a country's borders during a specific period. The term total market value refers to the monetary worth attributed to these goods and services at their final selling price, reflecting their value to the end consumer. It is crucial to emphasize final goods and services. This explicitly excludes intermediate goods, such as raw materials or components used in producing another good, to prevent double counting and accurately represent the economy's output. This metric specifically captures production occurring within the geographic confines of a nation, irrespective of the nationality of the producing entity, over a defined time frame, typically a year or a quarter. To accurately measure a nation's economic output, gross domestic product, or GDP, focuses exclusively on the market value of final goods and services. Final goods are products consumed by the end user, not used as inputs for further production. Intermediate goods, such as raw materials or components like steel used in a car's construction, are deliberately excluded from GDP calculations. If we were to count the value of the steel and then subsequently count the entire car, we would be double counting the value attributed to that steel. Therefore, GDP accounts only for the value of the finished car. This critical methodology ensures that each product's value is precisely counted only once at its final stage of sale, providing a precise and unduplicated measure of total economic activity. Produced within a country's borders, component of GDP is crucial for understanding its geographical scope. GDP quantifies economic output occurring strictly within a nation's physical boundaries. This criterion means that whether a company is domestically owned or a foreign entity, its production contributes to the host country's GDP as long as the economic activity takes place within its borders. For instance, an international corporation manufacturing goods in Germany contributes to Germany's GDP. Conversely, a German company producing items in another country, such as Brazil, contributes to Brazil's GDP, not Germany's. This principle firmly establishes GDP as a measure of domestic production, irrespective of the producer's nationality. Understanding GDP requires an appreciation for the specific time frames over which it is measured. Economic activity is not static. Therefore, tracking its value over distinct periods is crucial for meaningful analysis. The two primary reporting intervals are quarterly and annually. Quarterly GDP data captures economic output over 3-month increments, providing frequent updates on short-term fluctuations and immediate trends. Annual GDP, conversely, aggregates these quarterly figures to present a comprehensive 12-month overview, essential for assessing long-term growth trajectories and making year-over-year comparisons. These precise snapshots allow economists and policymakers to meticulously track growth, identify cycles, evaluate policy effectiveness, and forecast future economic performance with greater accuracy, forming the bedrock of national economic assessments. Understanding the distinction between intermediate and final goods is crucial for accurate GDP calculation. Intermediate goods are products used as inputs in the production of other goods or services. For instance, the steel used in manufacturing an automobile or the flour purchased by a bakery to make bread are considered intermediate goods. They are not sold directly to the end consumer. Conversely, final goods are products consumed by the ultimate user or used for capital investment. These include the completed automobile sold to a consumer, the loaf of bread purchased at a grocery store, or new machinery acquired by a business. The critical point is that only the value of final goods and services is included in GDP. This methodology prevents double counting, where the value of intermediate inputs could be inadvertently tallied multiple times as they progress through various stages of production, thereby inflating the true measure of economic output. This precise accounting ensures GDP reflects the true market value of all final goods and services produced within a nation's borders during a specific period. The gross domestic product is fundamentally a measure of market value. To aggregate the vast array of goods and services produced within an economy, from automobiles to haircuts, we cannot simply add their quantities. Instead, we use their market prices as a common denominator. This process converts the physical output into a standardized monetary value. Market prices are crucial because they reflect the economic value that consumers place on these goods and services. When a product or service is exchanged in the market, its price represents the consensus of its worth at that moment. Therefore, GDP calculation sums these market-determined values, providing a comprehensive monetary measure of a nation's total economic output. The expenditure approach is the most widely recognized method for calculating a country's gross domestic product. This method sums up all spending on final goods and services within an economy over a specific period. It comprises four primary components. First, C represents consumer spending, encompassing all household purchases of durable goods, non-durable goods, and services. Second, I stands for business investment, which includes spending by businesses on capital goods, inventories, and new residential construction. Third, G denotes government spending, covering public sector consumption and investment, such as infrastructure projects, defense, and public services. Finally, an X signifies net exports, calculated as a country's total exports minus its total imports, reflecting the balance of international trade. When combined, these components yield the fundamental GDP formula. GDP equals consumer spending plus business investment plus government spending plus net exports. This approach provides a comprehensive view of total demand in an economy. Component C of GDP is personal consumption expenditures, which quantifies the total spending by households on all goods and services. This critical category encompasses a wide range of purchases. It includes durable goods, such as automobiles and household appliances, which are items designed for long-term use. It also covers non-durable goods, which are consumed quickly, like food, beverages, and clothing. Furthermore, personal consumption expenditures accounts for services, a substantial portion of the modern economy, including healthcare, education, recreational activities, and professional services. As the predominant component of GDP in most developed economies, the aggregate of personal consumption expenditures serves as a vital indicator of consumer confidence and the overall health and direction of the national economy. Durable goods represent a significant component of consumption within GDP calculations. These are products designed to last for an extended period, typically 3 years or more, distinguishing them from non-durable goods or services. Common examples include automobiles, major household appliances such as refrigerators and washing machines, furniture, and consumer electronics. The purchase of durable goods by consumers is a key economic indicator. It often signifies a strong level of consumer confidence in their financial future and the broader economy, as these purchases usually involve a substantial financial commitment. Therefore, trends in durable goods spending are closely monitored as a barometer for economic health and future growth prospects. Non-durable goods represent a fundamental category within a nation's economy. These are items consumed or used up relatively quickly, typically within 3 years. This category encompasses the everyday essentials critical to household functioning and daily life, such as food, beverages, clothing, household cleaning products, and fuel. The expenditure on non-durable goods constitutes a substantial and consistent portion of household consumption. As such, tracking the production and sales of these items provides valuable insights into consumer spending patterns and overall economic health, directly contributing to the consumption component of GDP calculations. The service sector represents the largest and fastest-growing segment of modern economies. Unlike manufacturing or agriculture, services do not produce tangible goods. Instead, they encompass a vast array of activities providing value. This includes critical areas such as healthcare, education, financial services, retail, information technology, and tourism. In developed nations, services consistently contribute the predominant share of gross domestic product, often exceeding 70%. This sector is a primary driver of employment, innovation, and economic resilience, forming the indispensable backbone upon which a country's overall prosperity and quality of life depend. Gross private domestic investment represents the total spending by businesses on capital goods and by individuals on new housing. This critical component of GDP encompasses investments in new factories, advanced machinery, cutting-edge equipment, and all forms of residential construction. It is a fundamental driver of a nation's future economic health, directly contributing to increased productivity, enhanced manufacturing capabilities, and the creation of new employment opportunities. By expanding the economy's productive capacity, gross private domestic investment lays the groundwork for sustained long-term growth and prosperity. Business fixed investment represents private sector spending on new capital goods designed to enhance future productive capacity. This critical component of GDP encompasses several key areas. First, non-residential structures, such as new factories, office buildings, and warehouses. Second, equipment, including industrial machinery, transportation equipment, and advanced tools. And third, intellectual property products, which cover software, research and development, and creative originals. By expanding and modernizing their capital stock, businesses lay the foundation for increased efficiency, innovation, and sustained economic growth, directly contributing to a nation's long-term prosperity and competitive edge. This investment is a forward-looking indicator, signaling confidence in future demand and production. Residential investment represents a crucial component of a nation's gross domestic product. This category encompasses all new housing construction, from single-family homes to apartment buildings, alongside significant renovations and improvements to existing properties. Furthermore, it includes the value of real estate broker commissions and other services associated with home sales, even for existing homes, as these services represent new economic activity. Residential investment is often a leading indicator of economic health and consumer confidence. Its sensitivity to interest rates and economic forecasts means it can experience significant fluctuations, thereby influencing overall GDP growth or contraction. Understanding this component is essential for a comprehensive view of a country's economic dynamism. Inventory investment accounts for goods produced within a specific period but not yet sold to final consumers. This category encompasses finished goods awaiting sale, work in progress, and raw materials held by businesses. It is a critical component of a nation's investment aggregate within GDP. Including inventory changes ensures that GDP accurately reflects the total value of all goods and services produced in the economy during that period, irrespective of whether they have immediately left the production chain or remain in stock. An increase in inventory signifies production exceeding current sales, while a decrease indicates sales drawing from past production. This inclusion prevents understating or overstating a country's economic output in any given period. Component G, government consumption and investment, is the third major element in calculating a nation's gross domestic product. This component accounts for all spending by the government on final goods and services, as well as capital investments. Government consumption encompasses current expenditures, such as the salaries for public sector employees, operational costs for public services like education and national defense, and the purchase of everyday supplies for government functioning. Government investment, conversely, refers to capital expenditures on infrastructure projects, including the construction and maintenance of roads, bridges, schools, hospitals, and the acquisition of new defense equipment. It is critical to note that this component specifically excludes transfer payments, such as Social Security or unemployment benefits, as these are reallocations of existing income rather than purchases of newly produced goods and services. Government consumption and investment play a vital role in stimulating economic activity, creating jobs, and providing essential public goods and services that contribute to societal well-being and long-term economic growth. Government spending, represented by G in the GDP formula, specifically accounts for the government's direct purchases of newly produced goods and services within the economy. This includes significant investments in public infrastructure, such as constructing and maintaining roads, bridges, and public buildings, like schools and hospitals. It also covers expenditures on national defense, including military equipment and personnel salaries. Furthermore, the salaries of public employees, such as teachers, police officers, and firefighters, are included, as they represent the government purchasing labor services. It is crucial to understand that government spending for GDP purposes explicitly excludes transfer payments. These are payments like Social Security, unemployment benefits, and welfare programs, which redistribute existing wealth rather than representing the purchase of new goods or services. Similarly, while governments may purchase imported goods, the G component primarily focuses on domestic output, with imports being accounted for elsewhere in the GDP calculation through net exports. The fundamental distinction is that G measures direct contributions to current economic output, not merely the total financial outflows from the government. The final component of GDP is net exports, abbreviated as NX. This figure is calculated by taking a nation's total exports and subtracting its total imports. Exports represent goods and services produced domestically and sold to foreign buyers. These transactions contribute positively to a country's GDP as they reflect economic activity within its borders. Conversely, imports are goods and services produced in other countries and purchased by domestic consumers or businesses. While imports fulfill domestic demand, they do not represent domestic production and are therefore subtracted from GDP to ensure that only domestically generated economic output is accounted for. The net export figure provides a crucial insight into a country's trade balance and its overall economic interaction with the global market. Exports are defined as the goods and services produced domestically and subsequently sold to buyers in other countries. These transactions are a vital component of a nation's gross domestic product, representing demand from the global market for a country's output. When a nation successfully exports, it directly contributes to its economic growth by increasing aggregate demand, stimulating domestic production, and generating foreign currency. This influx of foreign capital is essential for funding imports, servicing international debts, and bolstering overall economic stability. The scope of exports is broad, ranging from tangible manufactured products like automobiles and electronics and primary goods such as agricultural produce and minerals to critical intangible services including tourism, financial advisory, and advanced software development. A strong and diverse export sector is a key indicator of a competitive, innovative, and globally integrated economy. Imports represent the total value of goods and services that a country purchases from other nations. These acquisitions encompass a vast array of items, from tangible goods such as automobiles, electronics, and consumer products to intangible services like international travel, consulting, and digital subscriptions. When calculating a country's gross domestic product using the expenditure approach, imports are subtracted from the total. This adjustment is crucial because GDP measures domestic production. While imported goods and services are consumed domestically, they were produced abroad. Therefore, to accurately reflect only the economic output originating within a country's borders, the value of imports is removed from the consumption, investment, and government spending figures. The trade balance represents the difference between a country's total exports and total imports. When a nation's exports exceed its imports, it experiences a trade surplus. This signifies a net inflow of foreign currency into the economy, which can strengthen the domestic currency, increase foreign reserves, and potentially stimulate export-oriented industries. Conversely, a trade deficit occurs when a country's imports surpass its exports. This results in a net outflow of domestic currency, potentially leading to currency depreciation, increased foreign borrowing, and competitive pressures on domestic industries. It is crucial to understand that neither a surplus nor a deficit is inherently good or bad. Their implications depend heavily on the underlying economic conditions and their sustainability over time. These balances directly contribute to the net exports component of a country's gross domestic product. The income approach calculates gross domestic product by summing all income generated from the production of goods and services within an economy. This method aggregates earnings, including wages and salaries paid to employees, rent received by property owners, interest earned on capital, and the profits accumulated by businesses. Essentially, every expenditure made to purchase a final good or service represents income for someone else. By meticulously tallying these diverse income streams, the income approach provides a comprehensive measure of economic activity, confirming the total value of output from the perspective of earnings. Understanding how income is generated is fundamental to comprehending a country's economic structure. Wages represent the compensation paid to individuals for their labor and skills, forming the primary income source for most households. Rent is the income derived from the ownership or lease of land and property, providing returns to those who supply real estate resources. Interest is the return earned on capital, whether through loans, investments, or savings, compensating lenders for the use of their funds. Finally, profits are the residual income after all other costs have been paid, serving as the reward for entrepreneurs who take risks, innovate, and organize production, driving economic growth and creating wealth. These four categories collectively illustrate the distribution of income throughout an economy. The production or value-added approach to GDP quantifies the economic contribution of each industry within a nation. This method meticulously sums the market value of all final goods and services produced across various sectors. Crucially, it calculates the value added at each stage of production. For instance, the value added by a farmer growing wheat, then by a mill processing that wheat into flour, and finally by a bakery transforming flour into bread are all accounted for without double counting the intermediate goods. This approach segments the economy into primary sectors like agriculture and mining, secondary sectors encompassing manufacturing and construction, and tertiary sectors covering services such as healthcare, education, finance, and tourism. By aggregating these distinct contributions, we gain a comprehensive understanding of which industries are driving economic growth and creating wealth within the country. Despite their differing methodologies, the three approaches to calculating gross domestic product, expenditure, income, and production are fundamentally interconnected and, in theory, yield identical results. This identity stems from the circular flow of economic activity. Every dollar spent on final goods and services, as measured by the expenditure approach, simultaneously represents income for the factors of production involved in creating those goods and services, captured by the income approach. Concurrently, the value of those goods and services produced, calculated by the production or value-added approach, inherently equals the sum of expenditures on them and the incomes generated. Essentially, what one entity spends, another earns, and this expenditure reflects the value of what was produced. These approaches are simply different lenses through which to view the same economic transactions and value creation within an economy, making their ultimate reconciliation and matching a foundational principle of national income accounting. Nominal GDP represents the total monetary value of all goods and services produced within a country's borders during a specific period, typically a year, calculated using the prevailing market prices of that same period. It essentially captures the money value of an economy's output at current price levels. A key characteristic is its sensitivity to price changes. If prices rise due to inflation, nominal GDP will increase even if the actual quantity of goods and services produced remains the same or decreases. This makes nominal GDP a direct measure of an economy's raw financial size, but limits its usefulness for comparing economic growth across different years, as it does not account for changes in the purchasing power of money. While nominal GDP measures economic output at current market prices, it can be significantly distorted by inflation. As prices rise, nominal GDP increases, even if the actual quantity of goods and services produced remains unchanged or declines. This creates a misleading picture of economic health. Real GDP addresses this challenge directly. By adjusting for price changes, typically using a designated base year's prices, real GDP provides a true and stable measure of a country's actual production volume. This adjustment is critical because it allows us to accurately track genuine economic growth, distinguish it from mere price fluctuations, and make informed comparisons of economic performance across different time periods. Real GDP is the essential metric for understanding if an economy is truly expanding its productive capacity. The GDP deflator is a crucial economic indicator that measures the average price level of all new, domestically produced, final goods and services within an economy. Unlike the Consumer Price Index, which focuses on a fixed basket of consumer goods, the GDP deflator reflects the prices of all goods and services included in GDP, offering a broader perspective on inflation or deflation. It is calculated by dividing nominal GDP, which values output at current prices, by real GDP, which values output at constant base year prices, and then multiplying the result by 100. This ratio effectively strips out the impact of price changes from economic growth, allowing economists and policymakers to assess true changes in the economy's output and purchasing power over time. Gross domestic product per capita is derived by dividing a nation's total GDP by its population. This metric provides insight into the average economic output or income generated per person within a country. It serves as a crucial indicator for assessing average living standards and the potential for individual prosperity, allowing for more accurate comparisons of economic development between nations of varying sizes. While GDP per capita effectively illustrates the average economic resources available per citizen, it is important to acknowledge that it represents an average and does not reflect the actual distribution of wealth or income inequality within the society. Despite this limitation, it remains an indispensable tool for evaluating the economic well-being and productivity at an individual level. The GDP growth rate quantifies the percentage change in a nation's total economic output over a specific period, typically quarter over quarter or year over year. This metric is fundamental for assessing economic performance. A positive growth rate indicates economic expansion, signifying an increase in the production of goods and services, often accompanied by job creation and rising incomes. Conversely, a negative growth rate signals economic contraction, commonly referred to as a recession, where the economy's output declines. Sustained periods of contraction can lead to job losses and reduced consumer spending. Monitoring these growth rates provides critical insights for governments, businesses, and investors, enabling informed decisions regarding fiscal policy, investment strategies, and future economic projections. It serves as a primary barometer of a country's economic health and trajectory. While GDP is a powerful metric, it does not capture the full scope of economic activity. This is where the shadow economy comes into play. The shadow economy comprises all economic transactions that occur outside of official recording, taxation, or regulation. This includes a vast array of activities, from illegal trades like narcotics and illicit gambling to undeclared legal work, such as under-the-table payments for services that evade taxation. Furthermore, GDP largely omits crucial yet unpaid contributions like volunteer work and essential household labor. It also bypasses non-monetary exchanges, such as bartering, where goods or services are directly swapped without currency. These unrecorded activities represent a significant portion of economic value generation, offering real goods and services, but because they lack official monetary transactions or declaration, they remain invisible to conventional GDP calculations. Consequently, our understanding of a nation's true economic output and health can be incomplete without acknowledging this substantial hidden sector. While gross domestic product quantifies a nation's total economic output, it critically does not account for the distribution of that wealth among its population. Consequently, robust aggregate economic data can coexist with profound income and wealth disparities. A high national GDP does not inherently guarantee widespread prosperity. It can, in fact, mask situations where a small segment of the population accumulates the majority of economic gains, leaving others in stagnation or decline. Individual experiences of economic well-being vary dramatically within a country, a crucial reality fundamentally unreflected in these overarching economic indicators. This limitation necessitates a deeper analysis beyond aggregate figures to truly assess societal prosperity. While GDP effectively measures economic output, it largely overlooks a critical dimension: environmental costs. This omission creates a significant blind spot when assessing a nation's true sustainability and long-term prosperity. GDP does not account for the depletion of natural resources, such as forests, fisheries, or mineral deposits, which are often consumed to fuel economic growth. Furthermore, the economic burdens of pollution, including healthcare costs, ecosystem restoration, and lost productivity, are typically externalized rather than subtracted from GDP. Consequently, activities that deplete our natural capital or degrade our environment can paradoxically contribute positively to GDP, presenting a misleading picture of economic health. Recognizing and integrating these environmental costs is essential for a more holistic and sustainable economic framework. While gross domestic product offers a crucial snapshot of economic activity, it provides an incomplete picture of a nation's true prosperity. GDP quantifies goods and services produced, but it does not inherently measure the quality of life or the well-being of its citizens. This broader perspective acknowledges that human flourishing extends beyond mere economic transactions. Factors such as access to quality healthcare and education, environmental sustainability, social equity, and personal happiness are fundamental to a high quality of life. Various alternative metrics, including the Human Development Index, have been developed to encompass these vital aspects, advocating for a more comprehensive assessment of national progress that prioritizes the welfare of people over solely economic output. Household production encompasses the essential, often unseen, labor performed within homes. This includes activities such as childcare, meal preparation, cleaning, and home maintenance. While these tasks are fundamental to a society's well-being and productivity, they are not typically exchanged for money in formal markets, and consequently are not accounted for in traditional GDP calculations. This exclusion means a significant portion of economic activity, vital for the functioning of society, remains unmeasured. Economic studies attempting to quantify this unpaid work have estimated its value to be substantial, often ranging from 25% to 50% of a country's reported GDP. Recognizing household production highlights a critical, often undervalued economic pillar that profoundly impacts a nation's overall health and prosperity, despite its invisible status in official economic statistics. GDP, or Gross Domestic Product, stands as the paramount metric for assessing a nation's economic health and aggregate output. It serves as an indispensable tool for understanding economic growth, cycles, and overall productivity. For policymakers, GDP provides critical data for fiscal and monetary decisions, influencing everything from interest rates to government spending. Investors rely on GDP figures to gauge market stability and identify growth opportunities, guiding capital allocation on both national and international scales. While acknowledging its limitations in fully capturing societal well-being or environmental impact, GDP remains the foundational and most widely adopted measure for economic comparison and strategic planning. Its enduring relevance lies in its ability to provide a clear, concise snapshot of economic activity, evolving as a benchmark while discussions continue regarding more comprehensive indicators.